Welcome to CRE Unplugged. I'm Ryan Alzari, and with me is my co-host, the talented Nadine Ezzi. How are you, Nadine?
Hi, Ryan. I'm better now, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's that time of year now. It's getting cold. It's getting chilly. I'm not really loving the winter weather, but I'm managing. How about you?
I'm okay. It's the same. It's dark so early. And normally when I'm in Boston at my place there, it doesn't bother me as much. You know, people like New York, people are out there walking all hour of the day. Still in Ohio for the holidays visiting folks. It's not as bustling, I shall say, outside, but you know, I'm managing. It's all good. It's all good.
Well, let's talk about lighter, happier things. I want
Yes.
to congratulate you on being recognized by the New England Real Estate Journal.
Oh.
2024 ones to watch in the industry. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. That actually means a lot to me. Thank you very much. Yeah. And I love what we do, you know, and it's nice every now and then to be recognized. And I was alongside such other great leaders in the Boston and New England area. So thank you. Thanks.
Well, it was well-deserved, Nadine, and I'm so happy
Thank
for
you. Thank you. I appreciate it. They did ask me my favorite podcast. You can guess what I answered. So a little shameless promotion for us as well.
Oh, I love that.
yeah, you know, gotta slip it in whenever we can. So, but yeah, but holiday season, Ryan, we're in the holiday season right now.
I know. Which, I think about this all the time. My friend has a famous quote that he says, people make mistakes. I just seem to make a lot of them, which brings me to our do's and don'ts with holiday parties. I would really love to talk about that with you.
Let's do it.
Yeah. What would be some do's and don'ts for you?
Let's see here. Let's start with, okay, well, do for me is always got to have a festive outfit. Okay. I live for holiday party season when it comes to fashion. And so it's my chance to bring out the glitter and the glitz. So do put a festive outfit together. What about you?
Love that festive outfit. You're a great dresser. I'll definitely give you credit about that.
Thank you.
For me, it's about engaging more in small talk. I actually just listened to a TED talk about being a super communicator. And what I've learned is getting deeper with people that you don't know can get you very far in a conversation with someone and get to know them in a much better level. For example, I used to always go up to people and say, "Where do you work?" Suggest instead of saying that, say, "What do you love most about your job?"
Oh, I like that. I like that, Ryan. What a better way to connect with people.
Yeah, so that's something I will definitely be doing this year.
Oh, you're so good about that. Okay, you're getting all deep on this. All right, what about a don't? Do you have a don't?
Yeah, I have a don't. I actually experienced this firsthand. I was compliance analyst at Bank of New York Mellon, and we had our holiday party. I was about 22 at the time, and our HR rep got a little too tipsy, and she had to be escorted out by a couple of my colleagues into a cab because she couldn't handle the party. So don't be that person would be my best advice.
Yeah, I think the culture around company holiday parties it really is hilarious to me, right? We spend like 11 months out of the year just all buttoned up, right? And then all of a sudden it's okay to just like, for whatever to happen at the company holiday party, reel it in a little bit, folks. Okay. All right. You get a little drunk, but don't have to be carried out. Don't puke on your boss's shoes, right? If you're going to karaoke, fine. But, a little reason, I know. Holiday company parties, man. I feel like HR, though, should just give everybody a free pass that night. Like, I mean, you're just kind of asking for it. I don't know.
Yeah, but you also don't want to be that person the next day where you don't even want to show.
No. Have you ever been that person, Ryan, yourself?
No, I've never been that person.
I don't think I have.
But I think you're suggesting that I might have.
No, I don't want to make an assumption. Yeah. I'm just saying I don't want to answer for you. I mean, like no judgments.
I know.
This is a safe space in CRE Unplugged.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a safe space. I don't think I've been that person. And if I was that person, I clearly have no memory of it. So, no, I don't think I was, because historically I was always like the company's lawyer, right? So you can't.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. But anyway, Anyway, holiday party season, folks. Dress that festively, connect deeper with folks as you meet them, and don't be that person.
Yeah, that's great advice.
All right. So
Well,
speaking of really great advice, Ryan, shall we pivot into why we are here today?
yes, I would love to. A question that's often asked today is, can co-working be a catalyst for real estate transformation? Co-working spaces have evolved beyond niche offerings to become pivotal in real estate strategies, offering businesses near on-demand flexibility to adapt to flexible work models. A quote that I just heard by Yardy's Cube analysis of the co-working industry says that the US co-working industry is evolving rapidly due to the rising demand of flexible work environments. As more professionals seek dynamic and collaborative spaces, co-working operators adapt to meet these diverse needs, enhancing productivity, creativity, and community among workers from various industries.
Technology certainly plays a critical role in modern co-working spaces, enabling smarter and more efficient operations. A recent report highlights that IoT devices optimize resource management, while mobile apps provide on-the-go access to facilities, creating adaptable work environments tailored to modern work styles. These innovations enhance the appeal and functionality of co-working environments, catering to the growing demand for seamless digital experiences.
Nadine, according to a recent study, dynamic layouts with open collaboration zones and private focus areas, coupled with visually inspiring elements like vibrant colors and productive workspaces. These design innovations attract a wide range of users and reinforce co-working spaces as hubs for creativity and collaboration.
And as the boundaries of the modern office dissolve and become more expansive and even global in nature, co-working companies are entering into strategic partnerships with diverse service providers to further enhance their customers' experience. And with today's guest, we will explore all of these topics and more. So let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
And with that, I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Anna Squires Levine, Chief Commercial Officer at Industrious. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you both. It's nice to be here.
Welcome, Anna. Thanks for joining us.
Anna, we are officially in the holiday season, smack dab, so incredibly hard to believe, although I know we say this every single year. I have to ask, I know you have little ones at home. Are there any holiday traditions that your children look forward to every year?
Oh, they're pretty little. They're 5.5 and 2.5. So my husband and I are trying to invent traditions so that by the time they're big, we have kind of a collection of things that we've done as a family. But there aren't so many. This past Thanksgiving morning, we did kind of introduce them to the idea of a movie. We took all the pillows off our couch and put them on the floor and all sat in our PJs and watched Secret Life of Pets, an animated movie, which they kind of understood, I think. It's kind of a long time to sit through, but so not really, but we're excited to create some.
Oh, I love that. Frankly, that sounds like a tradition I'd like to do right now. But excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Anna, you have such an interesting life story that didn't start out in commercial real estate. So can you please share to our listeners your journey and what led you to your role at Industrious?
Sure. I hear often from people things like, oh, you have such a nonlinear journey, or you've done so many interesting things, and I'm happy to share it. I will say I am not someone really who operates with a life plan. When people ask me kind of what are you going to be doing 10 years from now, I have no idea. And it doesn't make me anxious. Like I kind of want to shape professionally the right thing for that chapter of life. And that's kind of how I've made decisions over time. But I grew up in Philadelphia, both in Center City and a small college town called Swarthmore. I have one younger brother who's very important to me, who lives all the way out in LA, and is actually a sound engineer for movies and video games, which is super cool. He is way cooler than I will ever be. I think on my college application, I wrote that I wanted to major in East Asian Studies. I have no idea why I wrote that. I wound up majoring in organic chemistry. So completely
Close.
different.
Right?
I don't know. Yeah, I started working in a biophysics lab during high school and loved it and loved the idea that chemistry is kind of like you look around at the whole world around you and everything you
Mm,
see is composed of elements doing their thing. And in particular, at the time, I was studying a particular protein in the flu virus that allows the flu to replicate. And I thought, oh, great, I'm going to go to medical school and get a PhD and be a part of teams curing illnesses. But at the end of college, I was going down that road. It just seemed like a huge leap to enter another 15-ish years of school. So I paused that plan, wound up at McKinsey, a big consulting firm. Not because I knew what it was. I actually hadn't really heard of it. I wasn't into college where business was a big thing, but I started to meet people from McKinsey, which at the time obviously had a massive consulting business,
mm,
and was like, I don't know what this is, but it seems like I'm going to learn a lot and work with very, really cool people. And I did. I feel like it was kind of business basics for me. What's a P&L? How do you evaluate one? What happens when two companies merge? How do you build a strategy? And I worked a lot in healthcare for insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies and biotech startups, and then wound up moving to South Africa to work still in consulting, but in public health.
mm,
I just got really invested in how do public healthcare systems deliver all these things that these private sector companies I had been working for create. Um, and, it's complicated. It was a privilege to be down there and get to think about how Southern African governments should do things like train tens of thousands of nurses, should reform their supply chain, should set up dashboards so they know what data they're tracking. I kind of felt like, why am I doing this? Like, why do they need
mm,
me as a 24-year-old whoever from Philadelphia to be advising the government of some enormous country on these kinds of things? Um, and so while it was an amazing experience for me, when I left McKinsey, I decided that I wanted to be involved in understanding that question more and ideally coming up
mm,
with solutions for it. And so joined with a New York-based philanthropist to start a foundation called Born Free Africa, which really set out to prove that getting amazing local talent into Southern African governments and public health systems was the way to drive better results in the public healthcare
mm,
system. And so that was really my first taste of building. Like, how do you start an organization? How do you hire a team? How do you run it
mm.
across multiple countries? How do you learn how to cultivate relationships with all sorts of stakeholders, government, UN, nonprofits, other private sector companies? And so did that for a number of years and had the privilege of working and living across the continent. And then eventually moved back to New York because the guy who's now my husband was here and we were going back and forth the whole time.
Oh, wow.
Started another company called Run for America with a few friends to try to recruit and elect awesome people to Congress on both sides of the aisle. I learned a lot, but it did not work. And after that, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had moved back to the States, wanting to try to continue to pursue this idea that leadership in government really mattered. Not really sure how to do that, having, I think, done it somewhat successfully in sub-Saharan Africa and not at all successfully here in the US. Um, and was lucky enough to be able to take a couple months off and just talk to a lot of people and try to figure out what's next. And I met the Industrious team, which at that time was just a handful of folks in a conference room, actually at this Industrious location that I'm sitting in Prospect Heights in Brooklyn. And I had no idea what co-working was. I didn't really know a lot about early stage startups, although in retrospect had started two of them. I just hadn't kind of characterized them that way in my mind. And just loved the Industrious team and the people who were here seemed smart and super kind and very low ego and really goofy. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but these people seem amazing. It was a big change of pace from trying to get stuff done in big government settings. And that was 8.5 years ago. And it's
Wow.
been such a joy. So that's my, I guess, professional journey. And in the meantime, I've had two kids, Kai and Remy, and I live not far from here in Crown Heights in Brooklyn.
Wow. I mean, truly, and I think that's one of the things I love most about our industry is that more often than not, you meet people that do have nonlinear career paths and how you went from biophysics. I believe that's how little I know about science to where we are today. I think it's extraordinary and it's such a testament about how transferable skills can be more often than not. And so I think that's wildly impressive. And I think during that tenure, so I was doing some research on you for this episode. I think you were a 30 under 30 for Forbes. I think this was during your Born Free Africa tenure. I believe so.
Yeah, feels like a long time ago at this point, but that's true.
Well, wildly impressive, wildly impressive. So speaking of leaders and building companies, Anna, what traits do you believe make a good leader? And what can companies within our industry, being commercial real estate, do to cultivate such leaders?
I was thinking about this question before we hopped on, and I feel like my my kind of initial set of answers are pretty consistent with a lot of what's written out there. Being a great coach and caring for your team, setting clear goals, finding the right balance between direction and autonomy,
Mm,
marrying, big vision with day-to-day execution, inspiring people around
mm,
you. I thought those are all true, and they're hard, and it's totally not straightforward about how to get good at those things, and I think it's an ongoing journey. The quality that I have recently come to accept that it matters a lot to me in leaders, that I think, on a kind of lifetime journey to embody, but hopefully can create a team that also experiences this, is how do you cultivate joy as a leader? And I say that knowing that every professional environment is different. I happen to exist in a late stage growth startup with a team who I think by design, by and large, are really excited to be here and working on meaningful work they care about. So I acknowledge that there are other settings where maybe this is harder, but I just believe that life is really short and that most of us need to work to live in one way or another. My 5-year-old asked me the other day, why do I work? And I'm talking about impact and team and growth and whatever. And he's like, yeah, but like, why? Like, on some level, we all need to make money. But I just feel like there's a way to do that that's joyful. And certainly in our work, which is important, and yet is not life or death most of the time for most of us. I really try to seek out moments in a day or a week or a month to laugh, to do something goofy, to help other people kind of not take themselves too seriously. And at Industrious, we've tried really hard in formal and informal ways to make that joy a part of how we operate. Everything, as we characterize the experience we want for our customers, there's a few different adjectives that define that, but one of them is delight. Like we specifically
mm,
say, you should have moments of delight where your eyes light up. Could be big or small. Internally among our team, we do all sorts of weird things. Like over the Paris Olympics this past summer, we had a virtual all hands meeting. So imagine 600 people on an all hands call doing a synchronized chair spinning contest modeled after synchronized spinning, but all of us in 200 different conference rooms across the world, like spinning in our rolly chairs. Like it's weird, it's goofy, but it's just like sometimes you need those releases of smiling and
mm.
laughter, and I think that's actually really important to me. So it's not the only characteristic that I think defines great leadership, nor is it, I think, the most common, but I've come to accept it's something that's important to me.
Yeah, and I can't agree with you more there because it's so important to be able to wake up in the morning, especially in New York. We're both like in the cold weather. It's hard to wake up and kind of feel motivated to get to your office and enjoy the work week or the work month. So I really think that really resonates with me and I would guess our listeners. I would really like to talk more about your business model here at Industrious. How do you know you are on the right track with customer experience, particularly when it comes to evaluating the desirability of a place? Is it something that can be measured?
So when our founders, Jamie and Justin, started Industrious, opened the first location in Chicago in the summer of 2013, they did it for a few reasons, but one of them was they were each running their own small companies at the time, one an education nonprofit, one a real estate company, and they didn't feel like they were able to find a great office that represented them. It was kind of like it's a lot of money to put out the door if you're a small company, and they kind of wanted the best of shared amenities with some degree of privacy. At the time, most of co-working was open plan. And they just decided, like, we want to feel like a boss when we're here. We want to feel as proud and excited to walk into our office as we would if we were, whatever, working for Google. And so they put customer experience in the center of what they wanted to do from the very beginning, so much so that today we have our kind of industrious strategy. It happens to be a four-part flywheel. It's all over all of our internal ways of thinking. The top of the strategy wheel is customer experience. And it's the top for a reason because we think it kind of all starts and ends there. And so from basically day one, they and then we started measuring Net Promoter Score. Would you recommend Industrious to a friend or a colleague? Which is not the only way to measure customer experience, but one of them, and we've now been measuring it for over 10 years. We have a lot of data on what people tell us, both the quantitative measures, but also all the qualitative feedback we get from that. In the last several years, though, we've noticed that while NPS gives us amazing feedback, and we get feedback all the time that we really can use to improve and act on, it's slightly less correlated with our own business outcomes than we would have thought. And this might not actually be a new observation. I know a lot of industries and companies have used NPS over the years and have, there are passionate advocates for it and passionate advocates against it. But we now look at two main metrics in addition to NPS that we believe tell us about how customers are voting with their feet. What is an output, which is net revenue retention, which is really like a SaaS metric. If you have a body of revenue from a certain customer set at the beginning of a year or a month or a quarter, how much of that do you still have at the end of that year, month, or quarter? You want it to be, well, we want it to be above 100%, which is a pretty high benchmark for a company like ours. And that tells you, are the customers you have growing or shrinking with you? But then as an input to that, we have actually found that utilization of Industrious, how often you're in and whether if you remember how often you come in at all, is the single biggest predictor of whether you'll stay with us over time, not necessarily your NPS, rating. And I think that's because this is a physical product. Like, it's one thing to say, I love Industrious, which most people do, and we're glad they do, and we listen to in response to that feedback. But ultimately, you're paying for a network of places and people and experiences. And if you're going to pay for it, you might as well use it. And if you're not going to use it, it's probably not worth paying for. So between NPS, NRR, and utilization, those are the metrics we really use to triangulate how are we doing with respect to customer experience. And we do everything we can to try to find then operational metrics that predict how those three measures will move over time.
Anna, as our industry moves more so towards focusing on the customer experience, whatever that may mean for certain real estate companies, this is the first time for a lot of companies where they will actually be focusing on customer experience and not only focusing on it, but trying to figure out how to measure it. What advice would you have for companies within commercial real estate or just now starting to think about customer experience and how they can go about starting to measure it themselves?
I think my biggest advice is just to measure it. Like, pick something and measure it, and then measure it over time. Ask questions as you get the data and try to learn from it. We at Industrious internally use the military OODA loop. OODA is observe, orient, decide, and act, which is a problem-solving structure that allows you to first observe. You're like, that's weird. I'm observing this in the data. And then to take a moment to be like, what would I need to know to understand why the data is telling me this before you decide what to do about it? But I think the most important thing is just measuring it. I mean, we work with so many landlords and owners who desire to create a better customer experience for their whole buildings, but don't yet have any version of attendance data or NPS or customer satisfaction. So I don't actually have a strong opinion on what it should be. I think the most important thing is just that you get started and look at it routinely and then try to improve based on that.
I will say when I went from practicing law to working for a SaaS company, the NPS was the first time I had been exposed to measuring anything, right? Being an attorney, you're really just measuring billable hours and whatnot. And so, but I was very intimidated, to your point, by measuring something and what that metric would be. I think being an attorney, I was like, oh, I better get it right. And to your point, we just had to get started. And it's really fascinating once you just get started with one metric and start to kind of gauge how your customers are experiencing your product or your service. It's a little addictive. And so I think that's pretty good advice. Just get started, and figure it out as you go. Speaking of getting started, and partnerships, Industrious and Delta recently announced a first of its kind partnership aimed at enhancing the experience of both companies' respective customers. Can you please walk us through what led to the idea of that partnership? And is this laying the groundwork for future partnerships?
I think in general, especially post-COVID, as how we all do work has changed so much, and I won't go down that path. I think it's well trodden. I think there are a lot of formerly non-work sectors who are thinking more and more about what it means to be adjacent to work.
Mm.
So, for example, Delta, which of course serves leisure travelers and business travelers, has been thinking more and more about how those two things are merging. I go on a business trip, but I stay for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Go on a vacation with my family, but I have to do a few hours of work while I'm there. And I think that's not only true of airlines. I think there are many, many sectors that are thinking about how their customers are working or attempting to work while using their products. And so we're getting, lots of different kinds of requests for partnerships along those lines and are really excited to explore them and bring both to our members, but also these companies' customers, hopefully something new and valuable. Um, in the case of Delta, they're a brand that we've long admired, and in the journey of a growth startup, you kind of start very, very small, and then suddenly one day, through hard work and good timing and a lot of luck, you become substantial enough that a company like Delta is like, yeah, let's do something together. We've long admired them. We've long wanted to do something together. And the creation of their new small business traveler program seemed like a perfect moment to put
Mm.
to combine our forces. And we've since been able to welcome a lot of really happy Delta small business customers into our spaces. And we've done a lot of cool events together, really just trying to help people work seamlessly no matter where they travel. It is the beginning, I think, of a new chapter for us in the way we want to partner with other companies, both because we know our members, are everywhere all the time. Um, and we want to be able to provide value to our members over and above the surface at their desk at Industrious increasingly. And because I think we have a unique perspective on what it looks like to work in this world these days. And a lot of companies out there are curious to combine forces with that. So definitely the beginning of a very cool next chapter. And we're, really honored to work with them.
Congratulations to you and the Industrious team. Very excited as well as a avid Delta flyer myself. So
Yeah, we'll be looking forward to what other partnerships you're going to be having in the future. I want to go back and talk about the office sector and the uncertainty and change that's taking place in recent years. It's a big topic of conversation, but I would really love to get your perspective and see how you feel the role of office is evolving in the future, and what key factors do you think will shape its trajectory?
A lot has been written and said about this. I'm sure your listeners
Oh
have read
yeah.
it all. So I don't want
Yeah.
to repeat. I think my view is just that people need other people.
mm,
And the word office is kind of clinical and not that exciting, but people like none of us are going to work alone on our couches 24/7 for the rest of our careers.
Definitely not.
So it's kind of like, okay, then when people meet up, whether that happens to be 5 days a week or that's once a month, how are you going to do it? With what goals? Who's facilitating that? What does great look like and where are you going to do it? And I think that office is very broadly defined. Like that, that could be a space that is yours dedicated for your company. That could be a cool hotel you meet up in. That could be a park. I don't know, but like a place where you are interacting with your colleagues or clients, I think are going to be important forever. No matter, as I said, whether you're a 5 day a week in the office kind of company or you're one of the most thoughtful remote first companies out there. Um, so as a result, I think whatever an office is has to design itself to support those interactions. And we certainly see that the kinds of interactions that a team who wants to be in every day. Like I'm an every day in the office kind of person. I have a small New York apartment. My kids are little. I cannot focus when they're at home, or even when I know they're about to be home and I hear them kind of bursting through the door. So I'm an office every day kind of person. I don't impose that on others, but what I want out of that office experience is pretty different than the team that's coming in once a month.
Mm.
And yet, when my team comes in once a month all together, I want what that kind of periodic let's get together thing is. Um, so to your question on trajectory, I think broadly speaking, um, I just think about it much less so from a like, what should offices look like and how often should people use them to how can you create moments of connection and moments of joy
Mm.
and moments of collaboration that actually matter? And then from that can follow what does the space actually have to look like? But I find a lot of the work is in who was actually thinking about that strategy to begin with. How are they setting that up? How is it being facilitated? Like it doesn't just happen on its own. Um, those are my high level thoughts at the risk of, venturing into repeating what others have said about this.
And are landlords that you're speaking with, are they thinking the same way that you are right now in terms of how work needs to be done and how it's changing? Do you see a lot of them kind of turning over and believing what Industrious is doing and trying to implement it into their spaces?
Well, for the Industrious co-working business, almost all of our co-working business is built on inbound interest from landlords. So
Mm.
in the sense that there are tons of landlords and owners out there who want want Industrious in their spaces. They want lots of companies coming in. They want a vibrancy that comes from a super high density use. They want increasingly to be able to serve other tenants in the same building with the ability to like kind of accordion, shrink in and out of our spaces. When they do get together for a month, once a month thing, why do they need to have an assembly space on their own floor? Can't they just use the Industrious common area instead of conference rooms, vice versa? Um, so I think there's probably no blanket answer, but I certainly think that landlords who have the creativity and really the capital to invest in building an Industrious are really excited about it. But it's a spectrum, of course. It's like I think if you're an owner, the challenge is you have space, static space that you have to fill. And you either need to find use cases, tenants for that space as is. You need to invest in the
Mm.
space to change how it can be used so you can broaden the use cases, or you need to sell it. And I think that's kind of the set of behaviors that we're seeing across owners right now.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting times ahead, and we'll be looking to see how that's going to evolve over time.
I will say, just for what it's worth, there are Industrious co-working locations all over the world. By and large, they all thrive.
Mm.
Whether you're in, I'm trying to think of a good example, like an outdoor mall in Kansas City, a suburb of Chicago, Union Square, New York,
Mm.
North Austin, a residential neighborhood in Denver, London, Singapore, Sydney. Like I do think that people wanting to work with or adjacent to other people is not a phenomenon that's confined to cities, for example, or to US coasts,
Mm.
or even to major metro areas. And so I think sometimes when kind of the real estate industry, commercial real estate industry writ large talks about the quote unquote flight to quality, I think at the highest levels that's true. Like certainly even among our portfolio, we see more pricing power, for example, in like, great addresses that everyone in the world knows and slightly less in slightly lower quality buildings. But we don't see huge differences, in overall demand otherwise. Of course, pricing is a proxy for demand, but it's not like you can only have an Industrious in the hottest spot in the world. We've been successful in a lot of places. And I think what that tells me is that if you create an environment that people want to come to, where there's a reason to come to, I look forward to it, then you can be successful almost everywhere. And I think that obviously is harder to do at the scale of a whole building or a whole campus.
Mm.
Um, but I just don't, I know the number. So I know that the snapshot of what's happening in the sector right now is that more people prefer to be in the quote unquote better locations and buildings. But I think that's kind of because the location and the building or the quality of it is a stand-in for the experience that people are getting there. Which is to say that I don't I don't believe that you can't have an amazing office experience in what would typically be thought of as like a B quality office park or something
Mm.
like that. It might be harder. You might have to have the lived experience of being there that much better to make up for not being in Hudson Yards or something, but I think it is possible. And we're working right now to try to quantify that.
I really appreciate that perspective, and especially in light of the as you said, everybody's talking about the flight to quality and the top, class A buildings and whatnot. And so I appreciate the perspective that a great work experience can be had elsewhere, and that it might just require a little bit of extra work or not now. But I do appreciate that. So we wouldn't be CRE Unplugged if we didn't talk about technology. So I have to ask Anna, is Industrious piloting any technology to aid in furthering its initiatives, especially as it relates to customer experience? And if so, how does your team determine which technology to pilot and deploy them in such a way that your main goals remain front and center?
So when we think about our goals as a company, we've really structured them around, I mean, it's a little goofy, but the
We
acronym
love
EGOT, yeah,
We love
EGOT,
Goofy.
Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony.
Yeah.
We looked at companies we admire, and just said, what goals and what metrics are they really humming at, and how do we get there? Um, Emmy, E is for earnings, so EBITDA. G, Grammy is for growth, revenue growth. O, Oscar is for what we call OO factor, which is NRR for us. So like, how sticky is your product with your current customers? And T, Tony is for timelessness, which for us is about risk. We look at basically our costs, our fixed costs as a percent of revenue. And anything we do has to ladder up to one of those metrics. Those are the things. It encompasses the financial goals of the business, the customer experience outcomes, and kind of the risk profile we want to build in. And typically, when we're thinking about how to build our own digital roadmap, whether we're buying something from the outside or building something internally, typically it's either going towards G, which is revenue growth. How are we
Mm.
going to get more members in the door, keep them happy, serve them? Or for us, O factor, which is net revenue retention. How are we going to create an unbelievable customer experience that keeps those people? And so each year we just say, great, what are the goals on that front? What's our thesis of the biggest levers that we want to pull to reach each of those goals this year? And from there, what are
Mm.
the projects, digital or otherwise, that we want to do? I think, one example is we know that although people typically want to see their space in person before they buy it, right? Like you want to buy a house, you go visit it. You want to lease full floor 38 of an office building, you go visit it. And our sector, I think, has trained people to want to like see the thing in person, even if there's not that much to see. We just believe that there's a huge chunk of people out there for whom that's not the case. I mean, if you can buy a Tesla on an app and you can sell your car on Carvana, like people are, I mean, it's Cyber Monday. Like people are buying hugely expensive things online.
I
We
was just buying
know.
something while we were recording this.
Oh, good. Afterwards, you'll have to give me tips. I need to go home and figure that out tonight. Um, we know there are a lot of people who like don't have an hour to come and tour an Industrious and check it out. They kind of, on some level, would prefer to buy it and assume they're going to love it, have an option to, to let it go if they don't. But for example, we are about to release the ability to buy your own office online, soup to nuts, which is not something that I think exists in the industry. And that specifically ties to our growth goal. We believe there's just an uncaptured segment of people who don't want to talk to a human. They don't want to go through the hassle. We will convince them that they should talk to other humans once we're here, because we think that's the purpose of the office. And we'll see what happens. I think looking at other
Mm.
sectors, there's a lot of upside potential. And I will say, like any company, we face our fair share of exciting, random stuff coming in the door every day. I mean, founders of all sorts of prop tech companies, early stage or late stage, writing us saying, how about this? How about this? How about this? And I think we do our best to try to triage and say, like, okay, which goal would this help us achieve? And is this
Hmm.
one thing more or less impactful than the things we already have going on? That's hard. It's an ongoing journey, but we try to tie it back to where we want to go.
Is there any particular type of technology that you believe owners and operators should have on their radars today or pay any special attention to? Or conversely, is there anything you're willing to state is overhyped?
I um Probably. I think it's all about what metrics predict progress towards your goals, and then
Mm,
how you use technology to get a better handle on those metrics. So it would be easy to say, like, access control is annoying almost everywhere. Owners should explore solutions that do a better job at it. And maybe they should. Or, people want to be able to order lunch right to their desk because when you're in, you're busy and you don't want to go outside. But I feel like it's just features. And if an owner says, okay, great, I want to increase the rate of lease up of my building, my thesis about my building is the following. The
mm,
core customer is X. What that person should feel when they walk in the building is Y. The components of that are ABC. Then, sure, explore technology that helps you achieve ABC. In our case, for example, we know that utilization predicts churn, like
mhm.
basically predicts customer lifecycle value. So we've invested a lot in technology that helps tell us about utilization and helps us anticipate before the customer even knows whether they're likely to stay or go and how good of a time they're having. But we try to root it more in what business inputs do we know are directly tied to business outputs, and how do we use technology to fuel the inputs rather than kind of good features that could be good or could not be, but you don't really know what impact they're going to have.
Features. That's a great distinction.
We love that you talked about your incredible career, and we would love for you to share some advice on someone who wants to aspire breaking into the built environment. Are there any specific skills, mindsets, or opportunities you believe are essential for the success in shaping the spaces where we live, work, and connect?
Well, I guess from my own journey, you know that I believe there's no one path to do anything. So there's no blanket statement I can say that I think would be credible. I do think, though, that a lot of people get into commercial real estate either from a financial angle, like it's about capital allocation, and commercial real estate is an asset class to be optimized, or from a technology angle. Like obviously prop tech is huge, and a lot of people who enter prop tech, I think, come from a SaaS background, and it's about how can technology improve the world. I think the third leg of the stool that is more close to my heart is it's a physical thing. So I would encourage everyone to go get experience in something operational and experiential. I find it kind of strange that in a lot of commercial real estate, the experience of the end user, like think about a big building,
Hmm.
there are some owners who do this very well, and they think every day, all day about if I'm an individual tenant walking in, what do I feel? What do I smell? What do I see? What do I experience? How am I greeted? How is my experience coming in the lobby connected to me going to my office, connected to me using a conference center, connected to me grabbing lunch? But it's kind of few and far between, increasing, but not that common. And I find it really um, odd. Like I think I understand where it comes from, given the nature of financial incentives on the part of owners and GPs and the way that plays through the asset managers and how those people think about what success looks like, understandably. But there's no other physical experiential business in the world that thinks about it that way. I mean, if I'm a theme park or a cruise line or a hotel chain or a giant ski conglomerate or a group of casinos, think about other kind of networked physical experiential businesses. all of those businesses think about the experience of the end user as being core to the quality of the business, the quality of the revenue they're bringing in. Um, all of which is to say, I would love to see more people work in commercial real estate who've had deep experience in something operational, whether that's running a restaurant, which most of us have done over, or working at a restaurant at some point, which most of us have done, or um, being a general manager of any of these kinds of businesses that I just mentioned, or working inside a hotel, or like any of those things. I think being in touch with what end users need and understanding the work it takes to create an experience for them is a big missing part of commercial real estate that I think if more people dip their toes into would wind up producing even better outcomes down the line.
I'm glad you brought that up because at Blueprint, Nadine and I got to listen to Jamie and also Lisa Picard. And Lisa
Hmm.
Picard, she talked about something that was so simple. She said, why aren't there people downstairs that are representing the building that come and greet the tenants before right when they walk in to make them feel that they're at home? I feel like that's the sort of thing that people are kind of missing right now. It's really the simple things that can really get their tenants excited to come in and feel that they're welcomed and that they're appreciated. Do you feel the
I
same
think
way?
that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we have a whole business adjacent to our co-working business in which we run the experience for whole buildings for owners. And I think it can start there, but doesn't end there. Think about your favorite restaurant. It doesn't have to be fancy, just a place you love going. It's like the all of your senses that work together to create an experience. Maybe you walk in and you love how it smells. It reminds you of some memory you had there before. Maybe the person who's going to seat you knows your name. Maybe they don't, but they greet you with a smile and they say hello. The way that the wait staff serves you, again, fancy or not fancy, has an impact on your experience there. Of course, the food, the music, the ambiance, like it's everything. And I think I'm really excited for the way in which commercial real estate is moving in that direction. I think it goes far beyond the lobby experience, but that's a good place to start if you want to start differentiating.
As I've been listening to you, Anna, I've been drawing a lot of parallels in my mind, not only to some past guests that we've had. One in particular that I'm thinking about is Mead Resser, who's at Carrier. And when we had Mead on, he talked about air quality and how air quality of a building can also contribute to somebody's experience, right? Like when you walk into a building and you mentioned scent, right? But when you take that deep breath in and you just immediately know when something feels different and it feels better, whether it is the quality of air or whether there's a lovely scent that's, coming out through the vents or whatnot. But also, I'm thinking of, hospitality, like you just said as well, with regards to a restaurant. You walk in and there's an ambiance that's been created that's the result of a number of different factors. And, Ryan, you mentioned Lisa Picard, who uses the term workplace resorts, again, drawing from the hospitality school of thought. And so I am with you in that I'm quite excited to where we are hopefully headed as an industry and putting people at the back of the center of it and curating those experiences around them as well. And I'm quite excited to see where we go with that. So,
I think
but please go
just if
ahead.
I can add to that, I think I agree. And there are some elements of experience that if you walk into it, you can name yourself as the customer. Like, oh, like maybe you notice the air quality. I,
Right.
I know there's all sorts of studies that say air quality is important, and it is. I don't know that I've ever walked into an office and even one that had amazing air quality and thought like, oh, I
Right.
can tell the air quality is amazing. But the best experiential businesses brand themselves and their experiences. Like it is also kind of interesting that in most of commercial real estate, with the exception, I think, of the highest end buildings,
Hmm.
there's very little brand presence on and anyone's part, on the part of the owner, on the part
Right.
of a brand they create for the building. And I think
Right.
that branding is important because
Hmm.
it's it is part of the experience.
Hmm.
There's human psychology is just such that I could eat two identical snacks, but if I feel affiliated with the brand of one of them, I'm going to like it more.
Hmm.
And I think so much of our lived experience is how our brain interprets what we anticipate the experience to be. And so I
Hmm.
think um, I too am excited for the way in which commercial real estate over time is and will move in this direction. And I think it's not only about the inputs. Okay, like, is someone greeting you in the lobby? And is there a place to sit and finish up that call in the lobby before you go upstairs? And is there a place to grab lunch? And can I actually work effectively in the building? But it's also about, is the building telling me how I should anticipate those things so that I can get excited about it and tell other people about it and appreciate even more?
Almost suggesting I'm hearing, and let me know if I'm wrong, and the experience begins, it should begin before we even set foot in the building as it relates to the brand, the experience that you have when you associate or think of that owner, operator, whoever that may be.
I believe so. That's certainly what we're trying to build at Industrious, and I think what most experiential network businesses benefit from.
I get that. I think Red Roof Inn, I think high school parties that we used to throw after prom, right? And I think of, like, a Hyatt or something else. And it's two different experiences at a hotel.
There you go.
Exactly. So anyway, so Anna, would love to know, what lessons have you personally learned throughout your career to date that have had the greatest impact on you? And part two, what advice would you give to younger Anna, knowing what you know today?
The first, I think, is a journey. Like, I am not done with it, but
Mm,
I think I spent the first maybe 10 years of my career unknowingly judging my own self-worth based on other people's intentional or unintentional validation of that. Um, you know, what do performance reviews look like? Did I get good feedback on this thing or that thing? Was an idea I put forth the idea that ultimately the team, on whatever team it was, went with? And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out where that comes from, why that is, and I'm certainly not done with that. I think, many of us have kind of insecure overachiever elements of us. But I do think over the years, I've come to attempt to realize that over-indexing on kind of other people's professional feedback as a form of self-validation is tricky. Not that it's irrational or invalid, just that if it's the only source of knowing who I am and what I care about, it can be pretty crushing. Um, so these days, I care a ton about work. I work a lot. I love it. I care a lot about my colleagues, and I care what they think of my work and me. But I think have gotten a little bit more relaxed about kind of what matters at the end of the day,
mm,
and gotten to a place where there are things that are super high stakes and things I get stressed about, but it's no longer like hitting send on any one email or saying an idea in a meeting. And I say that because I have been there. Like, there's no magic switch. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden you just become confident. Like, I think it's a real journey in trying to understand where it all comes from. Not for everyone all in the same way. Like, I think probably of listeners of this show, some of you are nodding and like, oh my God, yes, that's me. And others like, no, I've never felt this in my whole life. But I think that's been the biggest learning for me, that again is not finite. Like, I think it's probably a
mm,
lifelong journey to explore that more. And then I think the second is I I feel like there was a moment where it kind of clicked for me that I shouldn't expect anyone else to move the ball forward if I'm not either doing it or delegating it to someone. And in particular, years ago, I had a boss with whom I had been talking for a long time about building a new team at a company. We
mm,
were like, oh, we should build this team, we should build this team. And we kind of like, written up like, here's what it would do, and here's why you would do it, and here's the roles we need. And then a few months down the line, this boss like hired the head of this new team, and I wasn't a part of the interview process. And I remember saying to this boss, like, dude, we were talking about this for the last year. Like, why wasn't I involved in the process? And he just said, I don't know, like, you should have done it if you wanted to, you know, be a part of this. Like, do it. You just didn't do it.
yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, well, it wasn't in my job scope, and who was I to start this other team and whatever. And yet in retrospect, maybe that example is kind of black or white, but I'm like, yeah, like, I don't need to do everything. And I've had to learn over time how to let go a bit. But on the other hand, there aren't like magical forces out there who are going to do our work for us. And so we each, I think, have the opportunity to pick up the ball and move it forward or make sure that someone else is. And I think something about that type of lesson has really clicked with me over the year, that there's no, there's no like work fairy godmother who's going to do things for us if we don't do them ourselves.
You are hitting home with me right now, Anna. Oh my gosh. I know Ryan's over there nodding as well, but those both hit home for me tremendous, especially your first one. Especially I'm in my early 40s now, and I'm still actively working on detaching my sense of self-worth from my level of productivity, level of productivity and accomplishments. And I love to work, but I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that right now, because I've experienced some pretty crushing moments in my life where I didn't get that validation. And I was like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm rock bottom right now. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Same. I'm happy to talk about it anytime. And if anyone who's listening wants to talk about it more, just ping me.
I love that. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, and I really loved what you said about what you would tell yourself, your younger self. I always thought in my younger days that people, should help me to, help with my career or improve my career. I never really thought about doing it on my own and making it happen. So I definitely agree with you there. Before we let you go, when you're not revolutionizing the workplace, how do you spend your downtime? Are there any hobbies or guilty pleasures that help you recharge? Maybe something we've never guessed?
Well, basically, I'm a parent and a partner, and I work. So in practice, I think most of my non-work time is with my kids. But I'm an on again, off again deadlifter, like trying to make more
Ooh.
time for real weightlifting in my life. I don't say this, this is not like I'm 4 days in the gym having worked it out, but there was a time when I was, so I'm trying to get back to that. Um, I consume a lot of content. I'm a night owl, so no matter how early I have to get up, I can't quite fall asleep early, so I read constantly. I'm a big physical book person, like actually holding it. And I also watch a ton of TV. I like vacuuming up books, long form articles, TV series, podcasts, and just putting it all into the kind of mental stew that's happening.
Mm.
And I love to cook. I had a very short-lived cooking blog several years ago before I joined Industrious,
Oh.
back when that was like a thing. This past Thanksgiving, I did not host, but we had a Friendsgiving the night before Thanksgiving, and it was such a treat to be able to spend that afternoon quietly, just like standing in my tiny kitchen, chopping things and getting ready for friends to come over. So that's me.
Instant gratification, the chopping. I love that. What are you watching these days, Anna?
Ah, so many things. Okay, first of all, it's the middle of season 47 of Survivor.
I've never seen an episode. I've never. Ryan, do you watch Survivor?
Watch it. It's a great show. I actually had my frat brother was in one of the seasons.
No way.
Yes, yeah.
I'll ping you. I'm so curious who and in which season.
Sure, I'll
Um,
share that with you.
I'm one of those, like I saw season one when it first came out and then didn't watch. And then in COVID, like many other, I think hundreds of thousands of people got back into it. So watching Survivor, I'm actually in a Survivor fantasy league with
Ooh.
friends and my parents and my brother and a bunch of other random people. Um, I am in the middle of the morning show, the Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon show, which I know I'm late to. I think it's long over, but enjoying that.
Obsessed.
I'm also in the middle of the third season of Slow Horses,
Ooh.
British MI5,
Ooh, I'm in season 2.
really good. And a million other things all at once. So it's kind of all across the board.
Well,
Awesome.
Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you, and I really hope we get to see more of this great work that you're doing at Industrious.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today, Anna. Truly, I know personally I've learned a lot and I've enjoyed it so much. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both for having me. This is a really nice way to spend what is otherwise a very dark, relatively chilly late afternoon and early evening here in New York. So I appreciate it.
We'd love to have you back anytime, Anna. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks to you
Thank
both.
you. Be sure to stay tuned for our recap after this word from our sponsor. Hey there, CRE Unplugged fam. We would like to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the Game Changers over at Hilo, the customer experience platform for buildings that's turning heads in the real estate world.
That's right. Can we talk about how Hilo is transforming the way we manage properties and create unforgettable experiences? Ryan, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Hilo?
Well, Nadine, it's all about reducing friction in property management. Hilo is like the magic wand that makes everything seamless and efficient. Say goodbye to those time-consuming tasks and hello to streamlined operations and communications.
Efficiency is crucial, but what about personalized experiences? Hilo takes it to the next level with a vision to tailor each interaction to the needs and preferences of its customers.
And let's not forget the community aspect. Hilo builds vibrant, connected communities. It's fostering a sense of belonging and togetherness.
Now, here's something that truly sets Hilo apart: their commitment to advancing ESG initiatives. They're not just about buildings, they're about making a positive impact on the environment. That's a win-win for everyone.
So, to our listeners out there, if you're ready to elevate your properties, digitize and enhance customer experience, and maximize satisfaction, Hilo is the answer. Please visit hiloapp.com for more information. That's hiloapp.com.
Ryan, well done, my friend. Another successful episode of CRE Unplugged in the books, this time with Anna Squires Levine of Industrious. I must say, I've come away from a number of different takeaways from this one. First off, what a lovely human being, incredible career journey from biophysics to commercial real estate.
Yeah. Very, very normal path, right?
Yeah, totally. Total normal path. So not surprising. One of the many things that really resonated with me from our conversation with Anna is, again, that validation that our industry is migrating its focus from being asset-centric to people-centric. And what I think is really interesting about this, and that Anna went into this and drew parallels, right? Any industry in which you have people in it that are showing up, right? Whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a hotel, whether it's an amusement park, the owners of that, or whoever's providing that product or that service, is always thinking about what the experience is like for the people showing up. But for our industry, it hasn't been like that for a very long time. But we're finally seeing a shift to putting people back at the center of that conversation. And Industrious is certainly focusing on that in all of their spaces, and also putting the customer experience front and center in all the decision making and what they do. So again, just kind of validating what we've heard from a number of our guests in the past is always very eye-opening for me.
Yeah, and I hope it just resonates with a lot of the owners out there, because this world of real estate, it's changing fast. And I really loved how she talked about their goals, and they have this whole thing about EGOT. So they're doing all this different stuff with partnering up with not only these corporate companies with what they're doing with Delta, but they're partnering up with landlords, having them reimagine what to do with these underutilized properties. And what really resonated with me was how they're now going to be working with Class B office owners and try to get them to reimagine the office space, which I think could be a game changer, right? So I thought that this really highlighted how partnerships can align with the broader trend of repurposing real estate to meet this post-pandemic demand that you just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gotta say, can we talk about joy, in the role of joy in the workplace? I'm so glad Anna raised that, because something I was actually musing about the other day, as we are now in the holiday season, and everywhere you look, it's just joyful, right? And it doesn't just appear. It's something that we as a society curate once a year, every year. And everybody's a little nicer to each other, a little more giving, a little more patient. And I was thinking to myself the other day, this is how it should be all year round. And I know this isn't a novel idea, But this is how it should be all year round, right? The employees shouldn't wait for that holiday party to let loose and experience joy, right? And I'm so happy to hear of an industry leader like Industrious putting front and center the role of joy, not only in their members' experience, but their own employees' experience as well. I think it's really critical going forward. I don't think we can talk about tenant experience or client experience or customer experience without thinking what is joyful, what makes it an environment enjoyable or somebody want to be in it. And I'm quite excited that conversation is being had more frequently and more in depth at companies like Industrious.
I think it's very important, right? If you're not going to be happy going into your office, then you're not going to be as productive as you want to be.
Yeah,
it's
just common sense. Yeah, it's common sense. Totally. If you're in a shitty attitude or in a mood when you walk into a space, I'm not going to be giving you my best. Like, it's just really simple, right? So, to go the extra mile a little bit, make sure that the people in your space are having an enjoyable experience, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed at the output that you could possibly get from those people.
That also goes hand in hand with team building. And if everyone is in the same, have the same joyful attitude and they're happy, that just raises the bar with team building and getting stuff done and being more creative and reaching the goals that your company set forth for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are my major takeaways from today. What about you? You have anything else, Ryan?
Yeah, one more thing that really was interesting to me was how they're leveraging data from their spaces to count on occupancy. That was one. So it kind of talks about how they help with team use environments, and the data is helping them with optimizing layouts and services to ensure that every square foot is being utilized.
Yes.
And what I thought was really interesting is that they're working on this and it's being successful, not just in the United States, but all across the world. So they have spaces in Singapore, Dublin, Paris. This renaissance of co-working and working together in this, very peculiar way that really didn't stand out before 2010 is now being successful all over the world.
I know. And I really appreciate the way she said it's not just about American office spaces, but that this extends, like you said, beyond borders, and that they're seeing fully occupied spaces in all of their international space as well. People want to be with each other for the right reasons and in the right circumstances. And so, yeah, that's a major takeaway as well.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you to Anna Squires Levine, Chief Commercial Officer at Industrious. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast.
If you have any questions that you want us to answer on air, you can email us at info@CREunplugged.com. See you next time. And until then, keep your conversations real and unplugged.